No time, no tools, big expectations. How do you transform school culture without derailing the train? Answer: little wins that bring big changes. The flywheel effect: harnessing the power of momentum to create a school culture that celebrates change and drives itself.
Hello and welcome back to the Flywheel Effect. I am Jordan and I'm here with Miss Deiera Bennett. She is an accomplished author and a former teacher. And Deiera, you taught grades 6 through 12. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit what you taught and where you
Sure.
are and
So,
all those things.
okay. First, I'm not an author yet, but I appreciate that.
You've got some pieces on the Life School blog that do great.
This is very true. I appreciate you putting that out there. So I'm a former 6th through 12th grade teacher. I taught business, marketing, financial literacy, career development, entrepreneurship, and digital technology courses. They had me teaching everything to 6 different grades at the same time. So I definitely had my fair share of, dealing with behavior issues because 6th graders and 12th graders behave completely differently. So I'm really excited to talk some about what worked in my classroom and the different strategies that I use to manage middle and high school students.
You wrote some pieces on the Life School blog that are really good, and I'm going to link those in the show notes so folks can check them out. My favorite one is this classroom management ideas you wrote. It's 20 ideas, and it's all about how to engage students better, how to create relationships in the room, and it's things that not everybody does naturally. And it's something that if you think about, it'll make you a better teacher if you take some of these tips. Would you want to give us a few of your favorites?
Yeah, sure. So before I get into that, though, I want to point out, some teachers go into it only remembering what it was like when they were in school. And I don't know about when you were in school, but when I was in school, teachers weren't really trying to build relationships with us. We did book work, answered the questions, took a test, and that was that. So I think that, what you said about it not coming naturally is definitely true, especially for teachers who, like me, didn't go to school to be teachers. So, okay. Anyway, praise publicly, which is number 5 on the list. That is one that is so important, especially if you have classroom management problems. Not saying you have the problems, but behavior issues in your classroom. I remember I had a student who his grandma got calls from like every teacher almost every day about his behavior because it was just not what it needed to be. And so every time that he, had a really good day in my class, I made it a point to call his grandma and let her know, like, he had such a great day in class. He did this, this, and this. And she would just be like, my heart dropped because when I saw a teacher's number, I just knew it was going to be something else. And so it really made him motivated to behave well in my class after that because he knew, okay, she actually notices. She doesn't just notice when I'm misbehaving. She notices when I'm behaving, and she goes out of her way to call my grandma. And he got like extra time to play with his game that night. So I was definitely his favorite person in the world after that. But even on top of that, go ahead. I can tell you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, the that you're talking about the phone calls that's a huge deal, particularly if it's a student who gets a lot of those like negative phone calls. The one positive one, like they're going to remember that. And like I was an administrator and I was over discipline in my school, and I've kind of figured out at some point in time that even the discipline phone calls go better if you can kind of sandwich the situation. Like if you just like lead with like, this is the awful thing that happened, like that's okay. You put them on a defensive and like you can't really talk to them about things. It's going to be all that helpful. But I even got to the point where I would, even if it was an event that happened, if I would find something that I would start with, okay, here's what happened. They've been talking to me. We're working through it right now, but I wanted to tell you what I lead with something like how they've shown some maturity. You know what I mean? Like, find a positive in how they've handled it afterwards. Maybe that helps too for our administrators who are listening. In the classroom, that you mentioned that I'm kind of thinking about perspective. keep in mind as a teacher that most of the folks that go into teaching didn't really struggle in school. Like it was like you were a good student. Like you showed up, you did what you're supposed to do, and you liked school, so you became a teacher. Well, like a lot of times, the places where you need relationships is not those kids. It's great to have relationships with them, but the ones that impacts the most are the ones like you're talking about. You got that negative phone call every class period every day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point because I was definitely one of those like great students. My teacher put me in the paper for youth of the day because I was such a good student. So I wasn't used to behavior issues like that.
Yeah, so that's why you became a teacher. You had positive experiences in school, and a lot of times if you're struggling, like you don't have that positive experience.
Exactly. That's definitely something good to keep in mind for all the teachers and even admin who are listening. So yeah, that's what I say about praise publicly. Like in front of the other students as well, you kind of have to know your student's personality because I remember the seventh graders, they were known in the school for just not behaving well. And they had a really good day, and the principal announced it on the intercom. And keep in mind, I'm at a 6th through 12th grade school. The seventh graders were so mad. They said, she made us sound like babies in front of all these high schoolers. And they were not happy about it at all. And so you really have to know your students' personalities to know what kind of public praise fits them. Phone calls home, that's good. Putting it over the intercom for all the 12th graders to hear, not so good.
So he got on the intercom and said something along the lines of, and we want to thank our 7th graders for behaving today. It's been a while. Something like that.
Basically so. Yeah, that's basically what they said. And, congrats to them. If you see a 7th grader, give them a high five. And they were just like, oh my God. Okay, so relating content to student interest. This is my absolute favorite. And granted, it was easier for me to do in business because business is everything. I'm biased, but business is everything. So it was easier for me to do. But aside from my content area, I would give my students time if they finished everything early, or time on Fridays to work on a passion project. And my reasoning behind that was learning isn't looked at as something that's fun. You go to school and you're not given the opportunity to learn about anything you want to learn about. And so students can start to associate learning with boring, work, things that just not negative, things, not positive associations. And so I was thinking, well, I want them to see learning as something that's fun, something that's beneficial, not just something you do for a grade. And so their assignment was to find something that they were passionate about, something they've always wanted to learn, or something they want to create, and spend that allotted time working on it. And so they were so excited once they got into it. At first, they were just like, do you want me to do a PowerPoint? Tell me what to do this project on, because I don't know. Like, they aren't used to having that kind of freedom. But once I gave them that freedom, and they were like, okay, so I can really do a whole project on Fortnite. Once they realized they could do it, they just took off with it. I had a student make a radio. I don't even know how you do that. I had a student teach us how to do origami. I had a student teach us like about hockey. Like, there were just so many different interests, and you can tell they had to do in-depth research in order to actually do it. I had students make clothes. I let them bring in like materials and everything on Friday so that they can actually work on the passion projects. And it taught them, okay, learning can be fun. But what it also did was, because they knew that I cared about what was interesting to them, they paid more attention when I went over the content for the course. It kind of established like a mutual respect that what I'm teaching you isn't any more important than what you care about. And I'm going to teach you, and then I'm going to allow you to teach me about, what's interesting to you. And that's something that was always super important to me, to make sure that there wasn't this mentality of, I'm the adult, do what I say because I said so. I'm the teacher. I know everything. Because this generation of kids, they're not going for that. at all. They'll say, why? You're no better than
So
me.
to keep you on the theme there, as far as like business and everything, from a teacher perspective, what you're doing is you're really getting some research into your customers, your customer being your students in this case. You know what they like, you know what you can talk to them about. So like all those little downtimes in class, like when they're working, you walk around and like you. This was something I always did. I was always ask them about something I knew about them because I knew they would like to talk about it, and it's just easier to make the conversation go. Then I would ask about the assignment they're doing. So like I'm walking around the room and I'll ask them about the Reds. If it's a kid who likes baseball, or maybe it's somebody who's into video games. I would ask them about maybe Fortnite or whatever it is that was out at the time. But having that information gives you that icebreaker with your students that you need all the time. So you just ask them a question, and then you can help them with the assignment. And just that, it kind of takes their guard down. Like, oh yeah, he does care. Or, she does care what I like, what I'm into, and then they can relate it back to what we're teaching them. Which that's valuable information because then everything is more engaging after that.
I love that. Really, you can do that with adults, show interest in what they care about before you start, trying to get info about what you care about. And so that's a really good tip for communication in general.
Like I said, I was mostly in a high school, so like a lot of times my aim was talking about shoes. Like high school kids love shoes, so like the Jordans or basketball shoes. I'd try to know what was what in shoe game, and I could ask them about shoes. I would wear specific shoes class. We could talk about it, but that was an end for a while. A lot of times sports is an end, but it can be all sorts of things.
Yeah. And something else that you can do if if you got to teach your content anyway, and sometimes the content is just boring, but the way that you allow them to show their understanding can be creative. So for example, my first year teaching, I mean, YouTube is still really big, but my first year, there were just like huge YouTubers that they loved. And so their assignment was, what did the assignment have to do with? I think the assignment had to do with like um, digital literacy, like how to behave online and cyberbullying and stuff like that. And so I said, you're a famous YouTuber and a middle school is paying you to do a YouTube video about digital literacy. And so their assignment, this caused them to have to research. I was more specific than that, but this made them have to go do research to figure out what to put in their YouTube video. I let them use their phone so that they could record the videos. These 6th and 7th graders had great editing skills, like coming up with intros and everything. So that was pretty cool to see. And they actually, you learn more when you have to teach it. And so by them doing this YouTube video as though they're YouTubers, they were super serious about like, no, the students need to know this. Like they thought they were about to be YouTube stars for real, I guess, even though it didn't go anywhere. But just doing things like that, with your content can really make a difference. And now, TikTok style videos would be good, like just do a TikTok video about something related to the content.
I did. I've come around like a long way on. Like when I first started teaching, if one of my students told me they were going to be a YouTuber, in my mind, I'm thinking that's silly. You're probably not. But as I've gotten older and like there's more different channels of media out there, and I know a little bit more about like what it takes to do different things. Not only can they do it, but like if they try to do those things, and if like you encourage them, they pick up all sorts of other skills that are transferable. So like just the fact that they could do their project like that, for one, they had to learn the content good enough to explain it to somebody else, which is huge in-depth learning. But then there's all these other pieces of like, video and the tech stuff, and then like editing it afterwards, and all those kind of things. It's all transferable skills they can use for all sorts of stuff. Whereas like when I first started teaching this, somebody told me I would like to do a YouTube video. I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have brushed it off. But towards the last few years, I've come around a long way on that.
Yeah, it's just transitioning with the times, with the new generation and what's interesting to them. That's why it's so important to talk to them so that you know what's important to them. I actually had 2 students who had like over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So some of them were actually getting paid from YouTube while in middle and high school. So that was pretty cool.
I've had a few different, like at least two students who were making like, I don't know if they were making like a lot of money, but enough, like more than like you would make mowing yards by being like production and editing for other people who are on YouTube. Like that's what they did. They would send them video, they would edit it, and they would send it back to them. These are 14 and 15-year-old kids.
They're so smart. I love it. I actually really love the direction the world is heading in, where students are looking into jobs that aren't as traditional.
Yeah, we had an episode with and it was very much of applying some business ideas to education. It was with Carl Jones. It's a previous episode, but it is all about entrepreneurship and then how you can apply that in your class, and not just like classes that are business classes, but like how do you create that kind of startup mentality with your content. Like it was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to that one. That sounds great.
So you had one more we were going to talk about?
Yeah, to be intentional about developing relationships. And, this kind of weave through the other ones that we talked about, but this just comes down to, in my opinion, having fun with your students. I remember when I was in my teacher prep program, the instructor said, the person who talks the most learns the most. And that stuck with me ever since then, because I realized, okay, if I'm the one up here talking all the time, they're not learning. They're not. They're just sitting there listening. And so this made me turn my classroom into more of a discussion-based classroom, where they're having to, give me their thoughts on things, and I'm able to challenge them. Well, explain where that perspective comes from. Well, what if we did it this way? Just challenging them. And that gave me ideas on, this is how they think, and help me find certain strengths that they have. I realized like certain students are super analytical thinkers, and that's something I would compliment them on. Complimenting students on their strengths, helping them in the areas where they can improve, and not just talking about with content, just in general. Like, you're a really helpful person. That's super important in the real world, where people always need others to support them. You're a great leader. What kind of jobs have you thought about? I look at who they are as people, and then try to help them see a bigger picture, because I never wanted them to feel like school is everything. I feel like for kids, oftentimes everything is about school and grades. And I never wanted them to think that, if you don't do well on a test, it's not a reflection of you, who you are. If you're not good at math, that doesn't mean you're a failure. That means you didn't do well on a math test. So I try to always look at the whole student and really amplify those areas where they might not really get the most attention, that are strengths. I always laughed with them. If I saw like a funny video, I might start class with it. I remember me and some of the other teachers planned a water fight for the end of the school year for all the students to play. But I'm a big kid, so it's wrong. But they weren't allowed to use the water hose, but I was. So so I just started spraying everyone, and they were just having so much fun. They were like, this is our teacher? She is such a big kid. And then they came after me with a bucket full of water. So they won. But, it still showed them like, okay, she's an actual person. She's cool. I can talk to her. She's fun and not uptight. And it's the little things like that. You don't have to get a bucket of water dumped on you in order to show them that. But just doing things that shows them that you have some kind of personality, just laugh with them.
So
Tell them. Go ahead.
On the water balloon note, I got a funny story that we had by the school I was working. It was a high school, and we had got our test scores back, and like that's it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. But like we'd got like distinguished in the state, and they wanted to use some funds to celebrate the kids, and like that's a great idea. And we actually did it during school, like the last 90 minutes of school. Basically, the outside became like a festival, and they used these funds to like rent all sorts of cool stuff for the kids to use. And it was a little bit of a free for all. So somebody who's like in charge of behavior, this was very nerve wracking. some of the stuff was really interesting. You talked about the water hose. They had rented these big inflatables that you like get into, and then there's a giant ball. So like you played like full contact soccer, but like you're in this like sumo wrestler thing.
I know what you're talking about. I've always wanted to
I
use one of those.
it's hard to describe what it is, but it, I played this probably for almost 90 minutes. I was in this thing, and like the kids kept having me come back and do this. So I think they had some pent up aggression or something. But I may find what that is and link it in the show notes just so people know what I'm talking about. If you
Yeah. I bet you had so much fun though, didn't you?
oh god, I still remember. It was so much fun.
Yeah. It's like, and when I had my fun with the students, I was still the teacher, but I kind of became a kid again. And I could tell it made them happy to see me and their other teachers just having fun with them. And I really think that's what it comes down to when you're talking about classroom management, having a mutual respect, not just going in there demanding their respect, because yeah, that might have worked when we were kids, but that's not working with these kids now. Like you have to have a mutual respect. You have to show an interest in them, and you can't put yourself on a pedestal just because you're their teacher.
I love the quote you gave. The person who talks the most is the person who learns the most. I love that. I haven't really thought of it that way, but it's totally true because the stuff that gets like take like just something as simple as like giving notes. Like, all right, we've got some content to go over, and we're going to take notes for this amount of time or whatever. The more collaborative you can make that experience, the more all that stuff is going to work. So, like, can you make a discussion base? Can you add media into it? Can you have them on the board for part of it? Can it be like, turning to your partner and discussing midstream, and then summarizing what they said? All those kind of things help because it's not just one person delivering.
Exactly. And you really, I don't have the most experience with math, but I feel like in most subjects you can turn them into discussion based topics. I know, like, my husband teaches ELA. He taught seventh grade ELA, and now he's teaching fifth grade ELA. But I used to always give him ideas for things to do with his students. Let them do a character analysis of a character from their favorite show, and then discuss it. And then next week they can do a character analysis of a character in a book. Do things like that. Let them discuss it. Let them bring those interests in. Just different things like that. You can turn anything into a discussion. You could talk about anything. I mean, as a teacher, you're talking about it. So you can get the students talking about it as well. And when you make it feel, even though you are the leader of the classroom, you are the adult, the teacher, when you make it feel more even, in a sense, they feel more comfortable with you and more respected by you, and they want to do things to make you happy because they like you. If the students like you, they'll act right.
I'll be honest, like I know this is probably in like for when we were growing up, it might have been the goal, but and maybe there's kind of an old school mindset, like when you're delivering content, like you want folks silent, listening, taking notes, and those kind of things, because that's kind of how it is in college a lot of times. But if you've ever like been in a class like that and you're the one delivering that, you don't know if it's being absorbed or not because you don't have any feedback. You know what I mean? So like that collaboration gives you feedback. Like, did this sink in? Am I on the right track? Do I need to hit this again? That kind of stuff helps you kind of check along the way.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I learned the hard way.
Oh, go ahead.
I learned the hard way because, like I said, I didn't go to school to be a teacher. So my first day teaching was literally like, these kids think I know what I'm doing. What do I do? And I did a PowerPoint. And so after like a month and a half of doing PowerPoints, a student just told me, this is boring. And I was crushed. I was 24 years old teaching 18-year-olds, and I was absolutely crushed. And so after that, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing PowerPoints with these kids anymore because they don't appreciate them. And and so we just started, talking instead of teaching them, this was a financial literacy class. Instead of teaching, these are the different types of loans, and this is what credit is. Instead, I started bringing in examples and Have y'all ever seen this in the mail? This is the credit card, when they're trying to get you to sign up for a credit card. Let's go through this. What do you think this means? And it became so much better. I had students telling me that they went home and taught their parents the things they were learning in financial literacy class because their parents didn't know. But when I was just doing those PowerPoints, standing up there, I'm the teacher, listen to me speak, they didn't absorb anything. Like, it was like I was just marking off instructed kids, check, and didn't even teach them, if that makes sense.
Yes, the more interactive and collaborative, and the more you can relate it to things that they've seen or at least can recognize, because they've all, like you said with this credit card thing, they've all seen that letter come in. They may not know much about it, but that's helpful. Dear, I don't want to take all day here with you, because I know you're busy and you got stuff to do. Where can folks find you? Plug what you're working on, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Deiera Bennett. I'm assuming you're going to see the spelling of my name on this podcast because otherwise you probably won't know how to spell it. But I'm not in the classroom anymore, but I'm helping teachers who are looking to explore other careers because I feel like the best teachers are the ones who are, excited to be there, passionate about being there. And once someone is ready to move forward, or not even move forward, but move on, try something new, it's important to give them the tools to do that because they've given so much to society already. So that's what I mainly do now. And I am also doing one of the most random jobs ever. I'm a LinkedIn ghostwriter for CEOs. So still teaching people in different ways because I'll always be a teacher at heart.
The flywheel effect, harnessing the power of momentum to create a school culture that celebrates change and drives itself.